The autumn wind carried sage and grit through the streets of Broken Mesa, Wyoming territory, rattling the weathered sign that read Needle and Star above Elena Doyle's shop door. She paused in her mending to watch dust devils dance past the window, their wild spirals reminding her that winter would come early this year. She could feel it in her bones, the same way she'd felt trouble coming the night before Seamus died. Elena pushed the thought away and bent back to her work, silver thimble catching the late afternoon light. 28 years had taught her that dwelling on the past only made the stitches crooked. The cavalry coat spread across her lap belonged to Judge Harmon, its brass buttons tarnished but still bearing the eagle's proud wings. She worked her needle through the torn shoulder seam with practiced precision, each stitch small and perfect, the kind of work that kept customers coming back, even when they whispered about the scandal of her past. The bell above her door chimed, and Elena looked up to see Jake Morrison stumble in, clutching a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. The stage driver's face was pale beneath its coating of trail dust, and dark stains spread across his shirt. Mrs. Doyle, he gasped, dropping the bundle on her counter. Need this. Mended. Important. Elena rose, setting aside the judge's coat. Jake, you're hurt. Let me... No time. His eyes darted to the window. Just promise you'll fix it. The coat. Promise. Before Elena could respond, Jake Morrison collapsed against her counter, sliding to the floor. She rushed around to help him, but his breathing had already gone shallow. With trembling fingers, she checked for a pulse and found none. Skeleton Crossing, he whispered with his final breath. Moon night. Elena knelt beside the dead man for a long moment, her mind racing. She should fetch Sheriff Baines immediately. That's what a respectable widow would do. But something in Jake's desperation made her hesitate. Rising slowly, she locked the shop door and pulled down the window shade before returning to the mysterious bundle. The oilcloth fell away to reveal a worn trail coat, the kind cowboys favored for long rides. Nothing special about it except for the weight heavier than it should be. Elena's fingers found the inner lining, professionally sewn but recently opened and restitched with hasty amateur work. She reached for her seam ripper. Inside the lining lay a leather-bound ledger, its pages filled with neat columns of figures and names. Elena's blood chilled as she recognized what she was reading: detailed records of water rights transactions, land deeds, and payments to Sheriff Baines. The name Mercer Talbot appeared on every page, along with notes about clearing families from properties near underground springs. The shop door rattled. Mrs. Doyle, open up. Sheriff's business. Elena's hands moved without conscious thought, sliding the ledger beneath a bolt of calico. She draped a work cloth over Jake's body and smoothed her skirts before opening the door. Sheriff Baines filled the doorframe, his badge gleaming despite the dust on his vest. Behind him stood two deputies Elena didn't recognize, hard-faced men who looked more like hired guns than lawmen. Afternoon, Sheriff. Elena kept her voice steady. I was just about to send for you. Poor Jake Morrison collapsed here not 5 minutes ago. Baines pushed past her, his pale eyes scanning the shop. What do you want? Brought a coat for mending. It's there on the counter. The sheriff examined the coat, his thick fingers probing the lining, finding nothing. His expression darkened. He say anything before he passed? Just asked me to fix his coat. He seemed poorly. One of the deputies had been searching Jake's body. Nothing on him. Sheriff, whatever he was carrying, it ain't here. Baines turned back to Elena, and she saw something cold flicker in his eyes, a look that made her grateful for the scissors in her pocket. You sure that's all? Mrs. Doyle, Jake didn't give you nothing else. Just the coat. Elena met his gaze without flinching. Will you be taking the body? I need to close soon. The sheriff studied her for a long moment before nodding to his men. As they carried Jake out, Baines paused at the door. If you remember anything else, you come find me, and Mrs. Doyle might be safer if you stayed home after dark for a spell. Dangerous times for a woman alone. After they left, Elena stood perfectly still until the sound of their boots faded. Then she retrieved the ledger, her hands shaking slightly. She understood now why Jake had died bringing this to her. The information in these pages could destroy Talbot's empire and expose Baines as his paid accomplice. But understanding and acting were two different things. Elena had learned that lesson the hard way when she'd turned in her own husband for setting fire to the Wheelers' barn. The town had branded her a traitor to her marriage vows, and only her skill with a needle had kept her from starving these past 2 years. The bell chimed again. Elena spun, clutching the ledger, but relaxed slightly when she saw who entered. Cole Hart had to duck his head to clear the doorframe, his broad shoulders blocking out the fading daylight. The owner of the Lazy H Ranch carried a bridle with broken leather, his work-hardened hands gentle despite their size. "Mrs. Doyle." He touched his hat brim. "Hoping you might work your magic on this, my best bridle." Elena noticed how he avoided looking at the bloodstain on her floor. Cole Hart had always been different from the other ranchers, quiet where they were loud, thoughtful where they were brash. His reputation as a former Union cavalry officer preceded him, though he never spoke of the war. "Of course, Mr. Hart. When do you need it?" "No rush." His gray eyes finally met hers, and she saw concern there. "Heard there was some commotion. You all right?" For a moment, Elena wanted to tell him everything about Jake, the ledger, Baines's threat, but trusting a man with power had cost her dearly before. "Just the usual troubles, nothing I can't handle." Cole nodded slowly, but she could tell he didn't believe her. "If you need anything, the Lazy H isn't far. We look after our neighbors." After he left, Elena made her decision. She would go to Skeleton Crossing tomorrow night, when the moon was full. Someone was expecting Jake's delivery. Someone who could use this information to stop Talbot. She'd go alone. She'd learn to rely on herself. As darkness settled over Broken Mesa, Elena lit her lamp and returned to her mending. But her thoughts kept drifting to Cole Hart's calloused hands, so gentle with the broken bridle, and the way he'd offered help without demanding anything in return. She pushed the thoughts away. She had more important things to worry about than impossible dreams. Outside, the wind picked up, sending tumbleweeds racing down the empty street. In the distance, the Bighorn Mountains stood purple against the dying light, keeping their ancient secrets. Elena worked on through the evening, her needle flashing in the lamplight, stitching together more than just torn fabric, stitching together the courage she'd need for tomorrow night. The ledger sat hidden beneath her sewing basket, its dangerous truths waiting to be revealed. Elena had survived scandal, widowhood, and the harsh judgment of a frontier town. She could survive this too. She had to. Too many families depended on those water rights, even if they didn't know it yet. As she worked, Elena didn't notice the shadow that passed by her window, or the fresh horse tracks in the dust outside her door. But Cole Hart, bedding down his horses at the Lazy H, noticed the riders heading toward town after dark, and he decided that maybe it was time to pay closer attention to what was happening in Broken Mesa and to the brave woman who mended more than clothes in her little shop beneath the stars. The moon hung full and bright above Skeleton Crossing, casting long shadows through the weathered timbers of the old bridge. Elena pulled her dark shawl tighter, the ledger wrapped in oilcloth and pressed against her ribs. She'd left her shop through the back door an hour past midnight, taking the long way around town to avoid the main street where Sheriff Baines's men might be watching. The crossing sat 5 miles north of Broken Mesa, where Skull Creek had run dry 2 summers back. Local folks said the bridge was haunted by prospectors who died searching for water during the drought of '76. Elena didn't believe in ghosts, but she believed in the very real danger of meeting the wrong people on a moonlit night. She'd barely reached the bridge when she heard hoofbeats behind her. Her heart hammered as she ducked behind a cluster of sage, clutching the precious ledger. But instead of Baines's deputies, she saw a familiar figure on horseback, Cole Hart, rifle across his saddle. scanning the darkness. "Mrs. Doyle," he called softly. "I know you're there. Saw you leave town." Elena stepped out, anger flashing through her fear. "You followed me." "Figured you might need watching over." He dismounted, keeping his voice low. "3 riders left the Silver Dollar about an hour ago, heading this direction." "This isn't your concern, Mr. Hart." "Maybe not." He moved closer, and in the moonlight she could see the concern etched on his weathered face. "But I've seen what Talbot does to people who cross him. You shouldn't be out here alone." Before Elena could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows beneath the bridge, a woman in a patched dress, rifle in hand. Ruth Hawkins, who ran the water station at Cooper's Bend, lowered her weapon when she recognized Elena. "Thank God," Ruth breathed. "Thought Jake might not make it." "You bring the books." Elena started forward, but Cole caught her arm. "Wait!" The crack of a rifle split the night. Ruth stumbled, a dark stain spreading across her shoulder. Cole yanked Elena down as another shot splintered the wooden post beside them. "The ravine," Cole shouted, half carrying Elena toward a dry wash that ran parallel to the creek bed. They slid down the sandy bank as bullets whined overhead. Ruth had managed to crawl behind a boulder, returning fire despite her wound. "It's Morrison," she called out. "Baines' deputy." Elena pressed against the ravine wall, her breath coming in short gasps. Cole checked his rifle, his movements calm and practiced. 3 of them. Like I figured. They'll try to flank us." "This is my fight," Elena insisted. "You don't have to." "I spent 4 years in the war, Mrs. Doyle. Seen plenty of fights that weren't mine." He glanced at her, and she saw something haunted in his eyes. "Lost men because I followed orders instead of conscience. Not making that mistake again." A sudden wind rose from the west, carrying the scent of dust and rain. Elena felt the change in pressure, a storm coming fast. Cole noticed it too. "Sandstorm," he muttered. "That'll even the odds." The wind hit like a physical force, driving sand and grit before it. Elena covered her face with her shawl, but the stinging particles found every gap. Through the howling murk, she heard horses screaming, men cursing, Ruth still firing steadily despite her injury. Cole grabbed Elena's hand. "We need to move. Get to Ruth, then my horse." They struggled through the blinding sand, Cole leading with sure instinct. A figure loomed out of the storm. Morrison, rifle raised. Cole was faster, using his rifle stock to knock the man down. They found Ruth slumped against her boulder, barely conscious. "Can you ride?" Cole asked her. Ruth nodded weakly. "Rather ride than die." Together, they got Ruth onto Cole's horse. Elena climbed up behind, still clutching the ledger, while Cole took Ruth's mount. The storm raged around them as they fled, the sound of pursuit lost in the wind's fury. Cole led them not back to town, but to the Lazy H, his ranch nestled in a sheltered valley. By the time they reached the main house, the storm had begun to ease, leaving them coated in dust and exhausted. Maria Santos, Cole's housekeeper, took charge of Ruth immediately, clucking over the wound like a mother hen. Elena found herself in Cole's kitchen, accepting a cup of strong coffee with trembling hands. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why help us?" Cole poured his own coffee, his back to her. "Year ago, Baines arrested Tom Wheeler for rustling. I was supposed to transport him to the territorial prison. Knew Tom was innocent. He was gathering strays off his own land. But I followed orders." He turned, his face grave. "Tom tried to escape. Deputy shot him. He died in my arms, asking me to look after his family." Elena remembered. The Wheelers had lost their ranch soon after, forced out by debts they couldn't pay without Tom's income. "That wasn't your fault." "Maybe not directly, but I could have spoken up, could have refused." Cole sat across from her. "Been trying to make amends since when I saw what you were doing tonight. Figured maybe this was my chance." Elena studied him in the lamplight. This quiet man who'd carried more guilt than she'd realized. "I misjudged you," she said softly. "Most folks do prefer it that way. Usually." He gestured to the ledger she still held. "What's in there that's worth dying for?" Elena unwrapped the book, showing him the damning evidence. Cole whistled low as he read. "This proves Talbot's been stealing water rights, forcing families off their land, and Baines is bought and paid for." Elena finished. "Ruth was going to get this to the federal marshal in Cheyenne. Her husband died trying to organize the homesteaders against Talbot." "We still need to get it there," Cole said, "but they'll be watching the roads now." Maria entered with news of Ruth wounded but stable. The older woman fixed Elena with a knowing look. "You'll stay here tonight, Senora. No arguments." Elena wanted to protest, but exhaustion weighed her down. Cole showed her to a guest room, pausing at the door. "Mrs. Doyle, Elena, what you did tonight took courage, but Talbot won't stop now. You've made yourself a target." "I've been a target before," Elena replied, thinking of the months after Seamus's death. "I survived." "You don't have to survive alone," Cole said quietly. "That's all I'm saying." After he left, Elena sat on the bed, still processing the night's events. She'd set out to deliver the ledger alone, trusting no one. Instead, she'd found unexpected allies: Ruth, who'd risked everything for justice, and Cole, carrying his own burden of guilt and trying to make things right. Through the window, she could see the last of the dust storm settling, revealing stars bright as silver needles in the fabric of night. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, new challenges. Talbot would know by now that his secret ledger had surfaced. The hunt would intensify. But tonight, she was safe in this house, surrounded by people who understood that some fights were worth having, some stands worth taking. Elena touched the small scar on her wrist, reminder of another night of fire and choice. She'd chosen conscience over comfort once before. She could do it again. In the kitchen below, she heard Cole's voice, low and steady, planning with Maria and the ranch hands, making preparations, standing guard. A warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the coffee, the dangerous warmth of not being alone anymore. Elena carefully hid the ledger beneath the mattress and prepared for bed. Tomorrow, they would need to reach the federal authorities. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. But tonight, for the first time in 2 years, she didn't face her troubles alone. And that, perhaps, was the most dangerous development of all. The morning sun painted Miracle Spring in shades of gold and copper, its precious water catching the light like scattered coins. Elena stood beside Cole's wagon, watching him check the survey markers that had appeared overnight, fresh wooden stakes driven deep into the earth, each bearing Talbot's brand. "Started 2 weeks ago," Cole explained, his jaw tight. "Talbot's been filing claims on every water source from here to the Bighorn Range. Legal-like, with papers all proper and signed." A dust cloud announced arrivals. 3 Shoshone riders approached, led by a woman Elena recognized, Mary Two Rivers, whose husband had worked with Seamus at the freight company before the fire. Mary's face was grim as she dismounted. "They came yesterday," Mary said without preamble. "Told us we have 3 days to move our camp. 20 years we've used this spring, and now they say we're trespassing." Cole spat in disgust. "How many families?" 43 people. 8 are elders. 15 are children." Mary's dark eyes found Elena. "I remember you, Mrs. Doyle. You tried to help when your husband was arrested." "I'm sorry we couldn't do more then." Elena felt the old shame rise. "That wasn't your fault. Seamus made his choices. As we all must." Mary gestured to the spring. "But this water, it belongs to no one man. The earth doesn't recognize paper claims." The sound of approaching horses cut short their conversation. Elena's stomach tightened as she recognized the riders, Mercer Talbot himself, flanked by 6 armed men. Sheriff Baines rode beside him, badge glinting in the morning sun. Talbot cut an impressive figure despite his 50-odd years, silver-haired and straight-backed in an expensive suit. His pale blue eyes swept over their small group with the calculation of a man counting coins. "Hart," he said pleasantly, "and the lovely Mrs. Doyle, what brings you to my property?" "Your property?" Cole's voice was dangerously quiet. "This spring's been open range since before you set foot in Wyoming." "Times change." Talbot produced a sheaf of papers from his saddlebag. "Federal Land Office approved my claim yesterday. Water rights and all mineral deposits in a mile radius." His smile was cold. "I'm a generous man, though your cattle can water here for a fee, $1 a head, monthly." Mary stepped forward. "My people have treaties." "Had treaties." Baines interrupted. "Federal government's been real clear about individual property rights superseding old agreements." Cole's hand moved toward his rifle, but Elena caught his arm. She forced herself to smile at Talbot. "That's quite an investment. Mr. Talbot, you must have plans for all this water." Talbot's eyes sharpened with interest. "Indeed I do. Mrs. Doyle, the railroad's coming through next year. They'll need water for the steam engines. The workers, the new towns that'll spring up." He leaned forward in his saddle. "A smart woman like you should understand. There's opportunity here for those with vision." "And those without vision?" Elena asked. "The families who depend on this water will have to adapt or move on. It's called progress." Sheriff Baines had been watching Elena closely. Now he spoke up. "Funny thing, Mrs. Doyle, that seamstress who got shot at Skeleton Crossing, Ruth Hawkins, she's been telling tales. Says you were there." Elena kept her face neutral. "Mrs. Hawkins must be confused from her injury. I was home all evening, working on Judge Harmon's coat." "Funny thing about that, too," Baines continued. "Judge says he never sent you no coat." The tension stretched taut as wire. Cole shifted slightly, putting himself between Elena and the sheriff. But it was Mary Two Rivers who broke the moment, laughing suddenly. "Sheriff, you're questioning Mrs. Doyle's word." A respected businesswoman. She looked at the other Shoshone riders. "Perhaps we should ask the federal marshal about these midnight shootings, and about water claims that appear so conveniently." Talbot's face darkened. "You threatening me, woman?" "Stating facts," Mary replied calmly. "Just as you are." A new voice joined the conversation. "Mr. Talbot, Mr. Talbot, sir." Everyone turned to see a young man hurrying toward them on foot, dark-skinned and dressed in railroad workers' clothes. Elena recognized him, Samuel Kahn, who'd repaired her stove last winter. He looked nervous but determined. "Sam," Talbot said coldly, "you're supposed to be at the construction camp." "Yes, sir, but—" Sam glanced at the others, seeming to gather courage. "The men are talking, sir, about the water contracts. They're saying we'll have to pay for drinking water from our wages. That ain't what we were promised." "You'll pay market rates like everyone else." Talbot snapped. "Now get back to work before I dock your pay." Sam stood his ground. "With respect, sir, market rates at $1 per barrel means most men can't afford to drink. In this heat." Baines's deputy, Morrison, spurred his horse toward Sam. "You heard Mr. Talbot. Get!" Cole moved then, his horse blocking Morrison's path. "Man's got a right to speak his piece." "Not on my land, he doesn't," Talbot said. His genial mask had slipped, revealing something harder beneath. "Sheriff, escort these trespassers off my property. All of them." Baines grinned. "With pleasure. You folks got 5 minutes to clear out." Elena felt rage building in her chest, the same rage she'd felt watching Seamus lie about the fire, watching the town turn against her for telling the truth. But she forced it down, thinking of the ledger hidden at Cole's ranch. Their real weapon couldn't be revealed yet. "Of course. Sheriff," she said sweetly, "we wouldn't want to trespass on Mr. Talbot's legal claims." As their group prepared to leave, she made sure to catch Sam Khan's eye, giving him the slightest nod. He understood she could see it in the way his shoulders straightened. They rode away in tense silence, Talbot's men watching until they were out of sight. Only when they reached a sheltered grove of cottonwoods did anyone speak. "We need that ledger in federal hands," Cole said. "Today." "It's not enough anymore," Elena replied. "You heard him. He's got legal papers now. We need witnesses, people willing to testify." Mary nodded slowly. "My people will speak, but who'll listen to Indians in a white court? They'll listen to railroad workers," Elena said, thinking fast. "Sam Khan knows what's happening in those camps. Others must too. If we can prove Talbot's using his water monopoly to exploit the workers." "The railroad company won't like that," Cole finished. "Bad for their image back east." They spent the next hour planning. Mary would gather testimonies from the displaced families. Elena would quietly reach out to the immigrant workers through Sam. Cole would find a way to get the ledger to Cheyenne without Talbot's men intercepting it. As they prepared to separate, Cole caught Elena's arm. "Be careful in town. Baines knows you were at the crossing." "I've faced worse than Harvey Baines," Elena said, though her bravado felt thin. "I know." His gray eyes were serious. "That's what worries me. Brave people take chances." Something in his voice made her pause. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Cole looked away, toward the mountains. "Tom Wheeler asked me to look after his family. I failed. Ruth Hawkins almost died last night because we couldn't protect her." He met her eyes again. "I've got enough ghosts. Elena, don't need another—" The use of her first name sent an unexpected warmth through her. "I'm not your responsibility, Cole." "No," he agreed. "But maybe I'd like you to be." The words hung between them, dangerous as loaded dice. Elena felt her carefully built walls threatening to crack. She'd promised herself after Seamus no more trusting men who thought they knew better, no more surrendering her hard-won independence. But Cole wasn't demanding anything, wasn't trying to control or protect her like some fragile thing. He was offering partnership, the kind she'd never had in her marriage. Before she could respond, the sound of cattle lowing reached them. In the distance, a dust cloud marked a herd being driven hard toward the spring, too hard for normal watering. "That's my brand," Cole said, confusion in his voice. "But I didn't order—" The crack of gunfire cut him off. The cattle, already spooked, stampeded toward the spring. Elena saw Talbot's men firing in the air, driving the animals into a frenzy. "They're cutting the fence lines," Mary shouted, "driving them into the gorge." Cole spurred his horse toward the chaos. Elena close behind, despite his shout to stay back. They reached the spring to find disaster, panicked cattle plunging into the narrow gorge. Talbot's men laughing as they hazed the animals toward destruction. Cole threw himself from his horse, trying to turn the leaders. Elena saw a calf separated from the herd, bawling in terror as it teetered on the gorge edge. Without thinking, she dismounted and ran to it. The ground crumbled. Elena felt herself falling, grabbed desperately at sagebrush. Strong hands caught her wrists, Cole, hauling her up with desperate strength. For a moment they clung together at the edge, his arms tight around her, both breathing hard. "I told you to stay back," he said roughly. "Since when do I take orders?" she gasped. Despite everything, the dying cattle, Talbot's cruelty, the danger surrounding them, Cole laughed. It transformed his face, and Elena felt something shift inside her chest. She was still in his arms, could feel his heartbeat against her own. "Elena," he started, but she pulled away. "Not here, not now. Not with Talbot's men watching and their world falling apart around them." They managed to save some of the herd, though dozens were lost in the gorge. As the sun set, painting the spring in shades of blood, Elena knew they'd passed a point of no return. Talbot had shown his true face, and there would be no peaceful resolution. "We end this," she told Cole and Mary. Whatever it takes. Mary nodded grimly. Cole's face was stone as he surveyed his dead cattle. The ledger goes to Cheyenne tomorrow, he said. But you're right, we need more. We need to unite the homesteaders, the workers, everyone Talbot stepped on. A revolution, Elena said softly, thinking of the sewing circles where women whispered their grievances, the workers who gathered at Sam's forge, the native families pushed from their lands. It starts with thread and needle, one stitch at a time, until the whole fabric comes together. As they rode back toward town, Elena felt the weight of what was coming, but also, for the first time in years, she felt the strength that came from not standing alone. Cole rode beside her, steady and solid. Mary's people flanked them, and somewhere in the railroad camps, Sam Khan was spreading word. Talbot had his money, his guns, his corrupt law, but they had something more dangerous, people with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The spring might be fenced, but revolution, like water, always found a way through. The abandoned forest ranger's cabin sat nestled in a grove of pine, 20 miles from nowhere. Snow had started falling an hour ago, thick flakes that clung to Elena's eyelashes as she helped Cole unsaddle the horses. They'd been riding hard since dawn, the ledger wrapped in oilcloth and tucked inside Elena's saddlebag. When the storm caught them in the open. "This'll do," Cole said, pushing open the warped door. "Storm's getting worse. We'll wait it out." The cabin was sparse but dry, a stone fireplace, rough table, 2 chairs, and a narrow bed with moth-eaten blankets. Elena shivered as Cole worked to start a fire with the split wood stacked by the hearth. "Let me see your hands," she said, noticing how he favored his right palm. "It's nothing." "Cole Hart, don't be stubborn." She moved closer, and he reluctantly showed her. Angry red welts crossed his palm where the barbed wire had cut deep during the cattle rescue. Elena felt her breath catch.
"Why didn't you say something? These could go septic."
"Had worse in the war." "Well, you're not in the war now." She retrieved her sewing kit from her bag, pulling out the small medical supplies she always carried: clean linen, carbolic solution, needle and thread. "Sit." He sat. The fire had caught now, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Elena pulled the other chair close and took his hand in both of hers, examining the wounds by firelight. His hands were large, calloused from years of rope and leather, scarred from older battles. But they were gentle hands, too. She'd seen him calm spooked horses, deliver a breached calf, handle her with such care at the gorge's edge. "This will sting," she warned, dabbing carbolic on the deepest cuts. He didn't flinch, just watched her face as she worked. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the crackling fire and the wind howling outside. "There," Elena said, starting to wrap clean linen around his palm. "Though what you really need is proper rest. These hands do too much." "Never thought I'd hear a woman complain about a man working too hard," Cole said with a slight smile. Elena kept her eyes on her task, but her voice softened. "Your hands deserve more than just work. Cole, they deserve—" She paused, heat rising in her cheeks as she realized what she'd almost said.
"Deserve what?"
The words came unbidden, barely a whisper as she tied off the bandage. "Your hands deserve more than sewing. They deserve to treat me like no other woman alive." The silence that followed was deafening. Elena couldn't meet his eyes, couldn't believe she'd spoken aloud the thought that had haunted her since that day at the spring. His bandaged hand turned in hers, fingers intertwining. "Elena," his voice was rough. "Look at me." She did, finding his gray eyes dark with something that made her heart race. Slowly, giving her time to pull away, he brought his free hand up to cup her face. His thumb traced the line of her jaw with impossible tenderness. "You think I don't want that?" he asked quietly. "Think I haven't watched you in your shop, fierce and independent, making beauty out of scraps? You think I don't lie awake wondering what it'd be like to have the right to hold you?" "I can't," Elena whispered, even as she leaned into his touch. I won't be owned again. Won't be some man's property to control. I don't want to own you, Elena. I want to stand beside you, fight with you, build something together that neither of us could make alone. He was so close now she could see the gold flecks in his gray eyes, could smell leather and pine smoke and something uniquely him. Her hands rested on his chest, feeling his heartbeat through the worn flannel. I'm scared, she admitted. Seamus started gentle too, said pretty words, then slowly, piece by piece, he took away who I was until I didn't recognize myself. I know. Cole's forehead touched hers. I saw what you did turning him in, standing alone against the whole town's judgment. That took the kind of courage most men never find. His voice dropped lower. But you don't have to stand alone anymore. Not if you don't want to. Elena closed her eyes, feeling tears threaten. I don't know how to trust again. Then we go slow, one step at a time, one stitch at a time, like you said. His lips brushed her forehead, gentle as snowfall. But Elena, those hands of yours have done enough mending other people's lives. Maybe it's time to let someone help mend yours. She pulled back enough to see his face. This good man who'd followed her into danger without being asked, who'd saved her life and never demanded payment, who saw her strength instead of trying to diminish it. Just a kiss, she whispered. Just one. And then He kissed her, soft and careful, like she was something precious that might break. Elena's world narrowed to this moment, the warmth of his lips, the gentle strength of his arms around her, the way he held her like she was everything. She kissed him back, pouring into it all the loneliness of the past 2 years, all the fear and hope tangled together. When they finally parted, both breathing unsteadily, Cole rested his forehead against hers again. That didn't feel like just one to me. Despite everything, the danger pursuing them, the storm outside, the uncertain future. Elena laughed. No, it didn't. They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other in the firelight. Then, reluctantly, Elena pulled away. I should check the horses. They're fine in the lean-to. But Cole didn't try to stop her as she stood. He understood too much too fast would send her running. Elena, we've got more to figure out than just Talbot. I know. She touched his bandaged hand gently. But we can't figure out anything if we don't survive tomorrow. The ledger has to reach Cheyenne. It will. His voice held quiet certainty. And after, we see what's left to build on. They prepared a simple meal from their supplies, dried beef, hard biscuits, coffee strong enough to float horseshoes. The storm raged outside, but inside the cabin felt like a separate world, warm and safe. They talked carefully of other things: the ranch, her shop, people they both knew, but awareness hummed between them like a taut wire. As night deepened, Elena insisted Cole take the bed. Those wounds need proper rest. And you'll what, sleep on the floor? I've slept in worse places. Not while I'm here. He stood, moving to spread his bedroll by the fire. The bed's yours. They compromised by both staying near the fire, bedrolls on opposite sides, but close enough to share warmth. Elena lay awake listening to the storm, intensely aware of Cole's presence just feet away. Can't sleep either. His voice came soft through the darkness. Too much in my head. Want to talk about it? Elena stared at the dying embers. I keep thinking about what Sam said. The workers dying of thirst while Talbot hoards water. The families pushed off their land. It's all legal, all proper papers and official stamps. Just like when they came for Seamus, all legal. All proper, but legal doesn't mean right. No, it doesn't. She heard him shift. That's why the ledger matters. Shows the corruption behind the legal face. Will it be enough? It has to be. They fell quiet again. Then Elena spoke into the darkness. I haven't felt clean since Seamus died. Like his guilt rubbed off on me somehow. The fire he set, the lies he told I was his wife. I should have known. Should have stopped him. You did stop him. You told the truth even though it cost you everything.
Everything except my life. The Wheelers lost that.
She heard movement. Then Cole was kneeling beside her bedroll. In the faint firelight, his face was all shadows and plains. Elena, you're not responsible for your husband's choices. You're responsible for your own, and you chose justice over comfort. That's not guilt. That's honor. Doesn't feel honorable. Feels like survival. Sometimes they're the same thing. His hand found hers in the darkness, careful of the bandages. You survived, and now you're fighting for other people's survival. That matters. Elena turned her hand in his, threading their fingers together.
When did you get so wise?
Somewhere between losing everything in the war and finding something worth fighting for here. He squeezed gently. Get some rest. Tomorrow's a hard ride. But he didn't let go of her hand, and Elena didn't pull away. They stayed like that as the fire died to coals, hands linked across the small space between their bedrolls. It wasn't the passionate embrace of desperate lovers, but something else, a promise, a possibility, a bridge being built one careful touch at a time. Outside, the storm began to quiet, leaving the world wrapped in pristine white. Inside, two damaged people held hands in the darkness and dared to hope that broken things could be mended, that trust could grow again like wildflowers after a fire. Tomorrow would bring danger, the race to Cheyenne, Talbot's men on their trail, the fight for justice that might cost them everything. But tonight, in this borrowed shelter, they had found something worth the risk. Not just the heat of attraction, though that burned steady between them, but the deeper warmth of understanding, of being truly seen.
Cole,
Elena whispered. Yeah. Thank you for following me that night, for not giving up. Thank you for letting me... She smiled in the darkness, feeling something ease in her chest. Her hands had done so much mending torn clothes, broken lives, shattered trust. But maybe Cole was right. Maybe it was time to let someone else hold the needle, to trust another's hands to help stitch her life back together. The ledger waited in its oilcloth wrapping, heavy with the power to topple kingdoms. But heavier still was this new feeling, delicate as fresh thread, strong as seasoned leather, the beginning of love built not on pretty lies, but on scarred truth, not on ownership, but on partnership. Elena fell asleep, still holding Cole's hand, the storm fading to gentle whispers of snow, the future uncertain but no longer faced alone. The abandoned silver mine yawned like a mouth full of broken teeth, its entrance barely visible through the driving snow. Elena pressed herself against the rough timber frame as Cole scouted ahead, her fingers numb despite her gloves. They'd been forced off the main trail 3 hours ago when Baines's men appeared on the ridgeline. It's clear, Cole called back. Goes deep enough to shelter. They led the horses into the mine's mouth, the temperature dropping even further in the underground darkness. Cole lit a lantern, revealing tool marks on the walls and abandoned equipment scattered like bones. The place had the feeling of a tomb. Sam Khan emerged from the shadows, making Elena's heart skip. They'd arranged to meet him here if things went wrong, and clearly, they had. Mrs. Doyle, Mr. Hart! Sam's voice echoed off the stone. I'm sorry. They caught me leaving town. Had to talk my way out. Tell them I was checking track damage from the storm.
Are you hurt?
Elena asked, noting his split lip.
Nothing serious, but I got news. Bad news.
Sam pulled out a crumpled paper.
Talbot's moving faster than we thought. New contracts came down yesterday. Any worker who can't pay for water gets their wages garnished. Man can work all day and end up owing the company money.
Cole cursed quietly.
How many know?
Most of the camps. Irish, Chinese, freedmen, even some Italians fresh off the boats. Talbot doesn't care where we come from long as we can swing hammers. Sam's dark eyes burned with anger. But here's the thing we're organizing. Quiet-like. Man named Patrick O'Brien from the eastern camps. He's been a union man before. Says we got rights. Rights don't mean much without power to back them, Cole said grimly. Elena pulled the ledger from her pack.
This might help. Proof that Talbot's water claims are fraudulent. But Sam,
There's more.
I need you to tell us about the deaths.
Sam's face went carefully blank.
What deaths? The ones Talbot doesn't report. The workers who die from thirst, exhaustion, the accidents that aren't accidents. Elena kept her voice gentle but firm. We need witnesses, Sam. People willing to speak truth to a federal judge.
Sam looked between them for a long moment, then seemed to come to a decision. There was a man, Joseph Littlefoot, Cheyenne mother, Welsh father, good worker, quick learner. He asked questions about the water prices, about why Indian workers got paid half wages. Next day, a rail slipped while he was under it. Elena closed her eyes, remembering similar accidents at Seamus's freight company.
How many others?
17 that I know of personal, maybe twice that if you count the fever deaths from bad water. The men who just disappear. Sam's voice dropped. But Talbot's smart. Always witnesses who say it was the workers' fault. Always papers signed with X's saying the family got compensation. Would you testify to this? Cole asked. If it meant something, yes, but my word against Talbot's? Sam shook his head. Elena stood, pacing the small space. The lantern threw wild shadows on the walls. What if it wasn't just your word? What if we had dozens of witnesses? The ledger proves the corruption, but testimonies prove the human cost. A sound from outside made them all freeze horses, moving slow through the snow. Cole doused the lantern, and they waited in breathing darkness. The hoofbeats passed, but the message was clear. Baines's men were searching. When Cole relit the lantern, Elena noticed him favoring his bandaged hand. The wounds were seeping through the linen. She pulled him aside while Sam kept watch. Let me look. It's fine.
It's not fine, and you know it.
She unwrapped the bandages carefully.
The cuts were inflamed, hot to the touch. This needs proper cleaning or you'll lose the hand.
Then we clean it in Cheyenne. We might not make Cheyenne if you're fevered and can't hold reins. Elena pulled out her dwindling medical supplies. Sam, is there clean snow near the entrance? Not where the horses have been. As Sam fetched snow to melt for water, Elena worked by lantern light. Cole's jaw was tight, sweat beading despite the cold. She talked to distract him, keeping her voice low. Tell me about after the war. How'd you end up in Wyoming? Ranch work in Texas first, then heard about free range up here. Land for homesteading. Seemed like a place to start over. He sucked in a breath as she cleaned a particularly deep cut. Met a woman in Dallas. Sarah, pretty, proper, everything a man should want. Elena's hand stilled momentarily.
What happened?
Brought her up here after we married. She hated it. Too rough, too lonely. Went back to her father after 3 months. His smile was rueful. Can't blame her. This life isn't for everyone.
No,
Elena agreed quietly.
It's not.
She rewrapped his hand with fresh linen.
But some of us don't fit anywhere else.
Their eyes met and held. There in the lamplight, with danger closing around them. Elena felt that pull again, stronger than in the cabin, deeper than mere attraction. This was recognition. 2 scarred souls seeing themselves reflected.
Elena,
Cole started, but she put a finger to his lips. Not yet. When we're safe, when this is over, then we'll have all the words. She managed a slight smile. Right now, we need to figure out how to get past Baines's net. Sam returned with the melted snow and news. There's another way through these mines. Dangerous, but it comes out near Beaver Creek. Half a day from Cheyenne. My cousin worked these tunnels before they played out. Left markers for the safe paths.
How dangerous?
Cole asked. Cave-ins, drop shafts, maybe some leftover dynamite if we're real unlucky. Sam shrugged. But better than facing Baines's guns in the open? They decided quickly. The horses couldn't navigate the tunnels, so they'd have to go on foot, carrying only essentials. Elena tucked the ledger inside her coat, against her heart. Sam led with 1 lantern, Cole brought up the rear with another. The mine was a labyrinth of greed, tunnels branching and diving wherever silver had beckoned. Sam's cousin had left chalk marks arrows, X's for danger, circles for safe rest spots. They moved in tense silence, the mountain's weight pressing down. "Here," Sam whispered after what felt like hours. They'd reached a natural chamber where several tunnels met. "We rest, then tackle the worst part." Elena sat on a broken ore cart, exhaustion hitting hard. Cole settled beside her, and she let herself lean against his warmth. Sam kept watch at the tunnel mouth. "I've been thinking," she said quietly. "About what you said, about standing together." "Yeah." "I had a partner once, in marriage. But we never stood together. He stood in front, expected me to follow. When I stopped following," she trailed off. "He hurt you." It wasn't a question. "Not with fists, with words, with control. Made me small, piece by piece, until I almost disappeared completely." She felt Cole tense beside her. The fire wasn't the first time he broke the law, just the first time someone died for it. "Elena." "No, I need to say this. You need to know what you're offering to stand beside." She turned to face him in the lantern light. "I turned in my own husband, testified against him, watched them take him away in chains. The town scorned me for it, but I'd do it again, because right matters more than loyalty to wrong." Cole's unbandaged hand found her face, thumb gentle on her cheek. "That's not shameful. That's the bravest thing I've ever heard." "Some would call it betrayal. Some would be wrong." His voice was fierce. "You chose justice, chose truth. That's who I want beside me, someone who knows the cost of doing right and pays it anyway." Sam's urgent whistle cut through the moment. Voices echoed from the tunnel they'd entered through. Baines's men had found the mine. "Move!" Sam hissed. "The dangerous stretch, now!" They plunged into a narrow tunnel that sloped sharply down. The chalk marks grew more frequent here, danger signs, warnings. The air grew thick, hard to breathe. Behind them, shouts and bobbing lights marked their pursuers. "Watch the—" Sam's warning came too late. The wooden beam Elena grabbed crumbled, sending rocks cascading. Cole yanked her back as a section of ceiling collapsed, sealing the tunnel behind them. "Well," Elena gasped, "that solves one problem. Creates another," Sam said grimly. "That was our marked route back." They had no choice but forward. The tunnel narrowed until they were crawling, rough stone tearing at clothes and skin. Elena felt panic rising, trapped underground, tons of rock above, air growing thinner. Then Cole's voice, steady behind her. "Almost there. Sam sees light." They emerged gasping into gray dawn light, snow still falling but softer now. Below them stretched the valley leading to Cheyenne, civilization waiting beyond the white horizon. But between them and safety stood 5 riders, Talbot himself at their head. "Well done," Talbot said pleasantly, "leading us right to the rat's hole. Though I admit, the cave-in was inconvenient. Cost me 2 good men." Elena stood straight despite her exhaustion. "How?" "Sam's cousin. Amazing what men will tell when properly motivated." Talbot's smile was winter cold. "Now, Mrs. Doyle, the ledger. Please." "No." "No." Talbot drew his pistol, aimed at Cole. "Let me clarify the situation." "You need me alive," Elena interrupted. "The ledger's no good without someone to authenticate it. Kill him, kill me, and you've got nothing but paper." "Clever, but I don't need Mr. Heart Alive or the Indian." Elena felt the ledger's weight against her heart. All those names, those stolen futures. She thought of Ruth Hawkins, shot for trying to help, of Joseph Littlefoot, killed for asking questions, of all the families thirsting while Talbot hoarded water like gold. "You're right," she said finally. "You don't need them.
She pulled out the ledger, held it up. But I need something too. Safe passage to Cheyenne. All three of us. Your word. Witnessed.
Talbot laughed.
My word, you'd trust that.
No, but I trust your greed.
This ledger disappears, and you keep your empire. It reaches federal hands, and you lose everything.
Elena managed a cold smile of her own. So, what matters more? Mr. Talbot, your pride or your profit? The calculation in Talbot's eyes was transparent as glass. Finally, he holstered his weapon. You have 1 hour's head start. After that, he shrugged eloquently. They didn't wait for more. Sam led them down a treacherous deer path, slipping and sliding through fresh snow. Behind them, Talbot's men watched like patient wolves. He won't honor it, Cole said once they were out of earshot. I know. Elena patted the ledger.
Good thing this is Sam's cousin's mining journal. The real ledger's been in my boots since yesterday.
Sam's shocked laugh echoed off the snowy slopes. Even Cole smiled grimly. You learned to play a deep game.
I learned from the best liar in Wyoming,
Elena said, thinking of Seamus.
Difference is, I lie for justice, not gain.
They ran through the falling snow, Cheyenne drawing closer with each desperate step, the truth burning against Elena's ankle like a brand of hope. Behind them, Talbot's hourglass ran its course. Ahead lay judgment, theirs and his together. The suspension bridge over Powder River stretched like a spider's web against the gray morning sky, ice crystals making the cables glitter dangerously. Elena stood at the eastern approach, the federal courthouse of Cheyenne visible just 2 miles beyond. So close. Yet the bridge might as well have been 1,000 miles long. Talbot's trap was perfectly laid. His men controlled both ends of the bridge, while Baines waited at the center with Sam Khan suspended in a cargo net over the rushing water below. The message was clear: surrender the ledger or watch an innocent man die. 60 feet down to the river, Cole murmured beside her, assessing the situation with a soldier's eye.
Current's running fast with snowmelt. Man wouldn't last 2 minutes in that water.
Elena watched Sam struggle in the net, his face resigned. He'd known the risks when he chose to help them, but she couldn't let him pay the ultimate price for her fight. There, she pointed to the bridge's support structure. The oil barrels for the bridge lamps. They store them on the maintenance platform. Cole followed her gaze, understanding dawning. That's a desperate play. Desperate times. Elena pulled the pen gun from her coat, Sam's invention, made for her months ago as payment for mending his work clothes. 1 shot, accurate to maybe 20 feet. I'll need a distraction.
Elena, no. There has to be another way.
There isn't. She gripped his arm. Trust me, when the shooting starts, you get to Sam. Before Cole could protest further, Elena stepped onto the bridge. The wooden planks creaked under her feet, wind making the whole structure sway. Talbot emerged from the far end, supremely confident. Mrs. Doyle, so good of you to be prompt. His voice carried clearly across the distance. I believe you have something for me. Elena held up the ledger, the real one this time. No more tricks, no more clever lies. Just truth and consequences balanced on a knife's edge. Let Sam go first, she called back. I think not. Sheriff Baines will verify the ledger's authenticity. Then, perhaps, we'll discuss young Mr. Khan's future. She moved forward slowly, each step measured. The maintenance platform hung 15 feet below the main deck, connected by a narrow ladder. The oil barrels were clearly visible, along with coils of rope and repair equipment. 1 shot to rupture a barrel, 1 spark to ignite it. Baines met her at the center span. The book woman. You killed Jake Morrison, Elena said quietly.
Shot Ruth Hawkins. How many others? Sheriff?
Following orders. Baines shrugged.
Man's got to eat.
Men have hanged for following orders. His face darkened.
Give me the damn book.
Elena glanced at Sam. suspended 10 feet away. His eyes met hers, and she saw understanding there. He began to swing slightly in the net, using his weight to create momentum. "You want to know something funny?" "Sheriff," Elena said, louder now, "I wasn't at Skeleton Crossing alone. Cole Hart was with me, saw everything. So did Mary Two Rivers. So did half a dozen others who'll testify." "Lying won't save your friend," Talbot called out. But she heard the first note of uncertainty. "Who's lying?" Elena pulled out something else, a small stack of photographs, the zinc plates that Sam had etched with evidence. "Modern Times, Mr. Talbot, your forged documents, photographed, your signed orders to eliminate problems, all copied, all safe with people you'll never find." The wind gusted, making the bridge sway sickeningly. Elena used the movement to shift closer to the ladder. Below, a crowd was gathering townspeople drawn by the commotion, including a man with a press badge prominent on his coat. "Joseph Littlefoot," Elena shouted, making sure her voice carried. "Miguel Santos Chenway Patrick O'Malley. Should I keep naming the men who died for your profit? Mr. Talbot." "Enough." Talbot strode onto the bridge himself, fury replacing calculation. "Baines, get that ledger now." Baines reached for Elena. She let the ledger fall, pages scattering in the wind, and drew the pen gun, not aiming at Baines, at the oil barrels below. The shot cracked like a whip. Oil began to leak, spreading across the platform. "No!" Talbot screamed. Cole moved. He'd circled during the confrontation, and now he charged Baines from behind. The two men grappled at the bridge's edge while Elena scrambled down the ladder. "The woman's getting away," one of Talbot's men shouted. Gunfire erupted. Wood splintered around Elena as she reached the platform. She grabbed a lamp, its flame flickering behind glass, just as Talbot appeared at the ladder top. "Stop!" He had his pistol trained on her. "You burn my evidence. You burn with it." "Your evidence?" Elena laughed, high and wild. "These aren't your papers, Talbot. They're the people's papers. Proof of every life you've stolen, every drop of water you've hoarded." She held the lamp over the spreading oil. "Maybe it's time you learned what it feels like to lose everything." Above them, Cole had cut Sam's net loose. The two men were hauling themselves up while Baines lay groaning on the deck. But more of Talbot's men were closing in. "You won't do it," Talbot said. "You're not a killer." "No, but I'm a fighter." Elena met his eyes steadily. "And sometimes fighting means burning down the corrupt to build something clean." She dropped the lamp. The oil caught with a whoosh, flames racing across the platform. Talbot fired wildly as Elena dove into the river. The shock of cold water drove all breath from her lungs. The current grabbed her, spinning her like a leaf. She fought to surface, lungs burning. Strong hands grabbed her, hauling her toward shore. Cole, who jumped after her. They crawled onto the muddy bank as explosions rocked the bridge. The fire had reached the other barrels, sending pillars of flame into the sky. "The ledger," Elena gasped. "It's safe." Sam appeared, supporting a limping Cole. "You threw the decoy. I've got the real one inside my coat." They looked back to see Talbot's empire literally burning. The bridge's center span collapsed in a shower of sparks. On the far side, Baines was in custody. The federal marshal had arrived, drawn by the explosions. Talbot stood trapped on the eastern approach, his escape route gone. "Come on," Cole urged. "Marshall's going to want statements." But Elena couldn't move yet. She stood dripping and shivering, watching the bridge burn. All those careful stitches of corruption, all those legal chains binding desperate people going up in smoke. "You did it," Sam said quietly. "Expose them all." "We did it." Elena emphasized the first word. "All of us." The next hours passed in a blur. The federal marshal, a steady man named Anderson, took their testimonies. The real ledger was authenticated. Sam produced witnesses from the railroad camps. Mary Two Rivers arrived with a delegation from the tribal council. Even townspeople who'd stayed silent for years began to speak. By nightfall, Talbot was in custody along with half his organization. Baines had agreed to testify in exchange for avoiding the noose. The dominoes were falling fast. Elena found herself in the marshal's office, wrapped in a blanket, finally warm. Cole sat beside her, his rebandaged hand resting on the desk between them. "It's over," she said, hardly believing it. "The legal part. Maybe—" Marshal Anderson looked up from his paperwork. "But there's rebuilding to do. Water rights to sort out, families to compensate. Going to need good people to oversee it all." He slid a document across the desk. "Territorial governors appointing a water commission. Wants people who understand what's at stake. Interested." Elena stared at the paper. Her name was already there, along with Mary Two Rivers and Patrick O'Brien from the railroad camps. "I'm just a seamstress." "You're a woman who brought down a corrupt empire with courage and clever thinking," Anderson corrected. "Seems like good qualifications to me." She looked at Cole, who smiled. "Take it. You've earned the right to help fix what Talbot broke." Elena signed her name with a steady hand, another stitch in the fabric of justice. Later, as they walked through Cheyenne's gaslit streets, Cole caught her arm. "Elena, about what happens now." "I know." She faced him, seeing in his eyes the same mix of hope and uncertainty she felt. "We've been through fire together, literally, but we barely know each other outside of crisis. So we take time, court proper-like, see if what we found in danger holds in peace." Elena smiled, thinking of all the careful mending ahead not just between them, but for the whole territory. "I'd like that, though fair warning, I'm taking that commission seriously. Won't have much time for courting." "Good thing I'm a patient man." Cole's smile turned teasing. "Besides, someone needs to teach you to ride proper. Can't have you falling in rivers every time there's trouble." "Cole Hart, I'll have you know." He kissed her, gentle and sure, there on the public street. When they parted, Elena was breathless. "That's not patient." She called it an advance on future patience. He offered his arm. "Walk you to your hotel." She took it, feeling the solid strength of him. Tomorrow would bring challenges implementing fair water distribution, fighting the remnants of Talbot's network, building trust between communities that had been set against each other. Hard work, careful work, the kind that required steady hands and patient hearts. But tonight, walking through the snow with Cole Hart, the ledger's truth finally told. Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in years' hope, clean and bright as fresh thread, ready to stitch together something new. The bridge still smoldered behind them, but ahead, the lights of Cheyenne promised warmth and possibility. Elena had burned down corruption to build justice. Now came the harder task, creating something worth saving from the ashes. She squeezed Cole's arm, feeling the future spread before them like unmarked cloth, waiting for skilled hands to shape it into something beautiful and strong. Together, one careful stitch at a time, they would mend what had been torn. The revolution had begun with thread and needle. It would continue the same way, binding communities, weaving justice, creating a pattern that included everyone, and at the center of it, two people learning to trust, learning to love, learning that the strongest fabric came from threads wound together rather than pulled apart. The courthouse in Cheyenne hummed with activity as Elena reviewed the latest water distribution proposals. 3 months had passed since Talbot's arrest, and the work of undoing his damage was proving harder than burning bridges. She rubbed her tired eyes, aware of Cole's presence in the doorway before he spoke. "Commission meetings not for another hour." He observed, "You could rest." "Can't rest." Elena gestured at the papers. 17 families still without reliable water access. The Shoshone delegation needs an answer about grazing rights. And now this letter from the railroad company. threatening to pull out if water prices increase. Cole set down a basket Maria's cooking.
By the smell. When's the last time you ate?
Elena couldn't remember. The weight of responsibility pressed heavier than Talbot's corruption ever had. It was easier to fight against something than to build something new. "There's news from Broken Mesa," Cole said, unpacking fresh bread and stew. "Judge ruled in favor of the water cooperative. Talbot's assets are officially seized for restitution."
Good.
Elena accepted the food gratefully.
Though it won't bring back the men who died.
"No, but their families will have something." Cole studied her.
"You're doing important work here." "Am I? Sometimes I feel like I'm trying to mend a garment that's more holes than cloth."
She set down her spoon.
"Yesterday, 2 homesteaders almost came to blows over creek access. The same men who stood together against Talbot are fighting each other now that he's gone."
Fear's gone. Leaves room for old grievances to surface. Cole moved behind her chair, hands gentle on her tense shoulders. "You can't fix it all. Elena, no one can." She leaned into his touch, allowing herself this moment. Their courtship had been careful. Proper Sunday dinners, chaperoned walks. Nothing to give the gossips ammunition. But sometimes she missed the intensity of those dangerous days, when every glance carried weight and every touch might be their last. A knock interrupted them. Sam Khan entered, and Elena straightened quickly.
"Sorry to disturb, but there's a situation."
Sam's expression was grim.
"Work crew found something at the old Talbot property. You need to see this."
They rode out together, the spring sun warm on their faces. Where Talbot's grand house once stood, workers were excavating for the new school, but they'd stopped digging, gathered around a hole in the earth. "Underground storage," the foreman explained.
"Sealed up tight, but that ain't the strange part."
Elena climbed down carefully, Cole and Sam following. The space was vast, carved from bedrock, and filled with water, thousands of gallons in ceramic-lined cisterns.
"He was hoarding it,"
Sam said quietly.
"All the time he was charging desperate people for drops. He had this reserve."
Elena touched one of the cisterns, fury and sadness warring in her chest.
"Joseph Littlefoot died of thirst. The Wheeler baby got sick from bad water. And this was here all along."
"Question is, what do we do with it now?" Cole asked. The answer came that evening at the commission meeting. Elena stood before the assembled crowd: homesteaders, railroad representatives, tribal delegates, townspeople.
"We have a choice,"
she began.
"We can divide Talbot's water by ledger and law, parsing out gallons by who has the strongest claim, or—"
She paused, meeting Mary Two Rivers' eyes. "We can remember that water doesn't belong to any one person. It belongs to the land, and we're just borrowing it for a time." "Pretty words," growled Peterson, a large rancher.
"But I've got cattle need watering. Can't feed them on philosophy."
"No, but you can feed them on cooperation." Elena unveiled the map she'd been working on. A series of windmill pumps at strategic points, maintained by the community. Everyone contributes labor or funds. Everyone benefits. The railroad gets reliable water for their operations. Ranchers get access for their herds. Farmers get irrigation. And the towns get clean drinking water.
"Who manages it?"
someone called out. "We do, together. Elected water board. Representatives from each group." Elena's voice strengthened. "Talbot ruled by controlling access. We'll lead by ensuring access." The debate raged for hours. Old prejudices surfaced: ranchers distrusting farmers, townspeople suspicious of the railroad, everyone wary of change. But gradually, Sam's passionate advocacy for the workers, Mary's quiet wisdom about seasonal water patterns, and Cole's practical negotiations began to build consensus. "I'll pledge the first windmill," Patrick O'Brien announced, surprising everyone. "The union workers will install it at cost. The tribe will share our water maps," Mary added. "Generations of knowledge about where springs run true." One by one, commitments came. Not universal agreement. Peterson and a few others walked out, but enough. Enough to begin. Later, Elena stood outside the courthouse, drained but hopeful. Cole found her there, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky.
"You did it,"
he said simply. "We did it, all of us." She turned to him. "I couldn't have stood up there without knowing you were in the room." "Elena," his voice carried weight, "I need to tell you something. I've been offered a position, federal marshal, based out of Denver." Her heart clenched. That's wonderful. You'd be good at it." I turned it down." She looked up, startled. "Why?" "Because what we're building here matters more than any badge." He cupped her face gently. "Because you matter more. I have spent years running from my past, looking for redemption in the next town, the next job. But maybe redemption isn't about running. Maybe it's about staying and building something worth having." "Cole," Elena's voice caught. "I know we agreed to court proper. Take our time. But I'm tired of careful. Elena, we've faced down corruption and bullets together. We've built trust from ashes. I think we know what we have." He dropped to one knee there on the courthouse steps, pulling out a simple silver ring. "Elena Doyle, you've mended more than clothes. You've mended this whole territory's faith in justice. You've mended me. Will you let me spend my life trying to be worthy of that gift?" Elena's eyes blurred. "I'm difficult, stubborn. I'll always put the work first." "I know. It's part of what I love." His smile was tender. "I'm not asking you to be less than you are. I'm asking to stand beside you while you change the world." "Yes." The word came out as half laugh, half sob. "Yes, Cole Hart. Though you should know I'm keeping my shop, and my commission work, and—" He stood and kissed her, ending her list of warnings. When they parted, both breathing unsteadily, he slipped the ring onto her finger. "Anything else I should know?" he asked. "I want the wedding at the Lazy H, outside, under the cottonwoods." Elena smiled through her tears. "And I want to expand the house, at a workshop where I can teach other women the trade." "Already sketched the plans," Cole admitted. "Maria's been after me for months to propose so she could start organizing." Elena laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. "She knew before we did." "Probably. That woman sees everything." They walked back through town hand in hand, no longer worried about propriety. Let the gossips talk. They'd earned this happiness through trial and sacrifice. At her hotel, Cole paused. "There's something else. Letter came for you today. Forwarded from Broken Mesa." Elena recognized the handwriting immediately. Sarah Hart Cole's former wife. Her stomach tightened as she read. "So, Mr. Hart, I hear you've prospered since our parting. My circumstances have changed, and I find myself reconsidering our separation. Perhaps we were hasty." "She wants money," Elena said flatly. "Probably. But the divorce was finalized 2 years ago. She has no claim." Cole took the letter, tore it deliberately in half. "My past won't shadow our future. I promise you that." Elena believed him. They'd both carry scars from Seamus, from the war, from all the battles fought and lost. But scars could be beautiful, showing where broken things had mended stronger than before. "Spring wedding," she suggested. "After the first windmills are running?" "Perfect. We'll invite everyone: homesteaders, railroad workers, tribal families. Show them what cooperation looks like." "Peterson will hate it." "Peterson can drink from his own well, then." Cole's grin was boyish. "Though I bet his wife comes anyway. She's been asking Maria for her bean recipe." They parted at the hotel door with promises to meet tomorrow. Elena climbed to her room, mind already spinning with plans: the wedding, the workshop, the water distribution network, the 1,000 threads that needed weaving to create lasting change. She pulled out paper and began to write. Not proposals or legal documents, but a letter to Ruth Hawkins, recovering at her sister's farm. Dear Ruth, the seeds we planted with blood and courage are beginning to bloom. Not perfectly, there are still rocks in this soil, but green shoots are pushing through. I'm to be married to Cole Hart come spring. I want you there, wearing something beautiful that doesn't smell of gunpowder. We're building the world Jake Morrison died trying to create. Water flows free at Miracle Spring. Outside her window, Cheyenne sprawled under stars. Somewhere, the remnants of Talbot's empire nursed their grievances. Somewhere, families still struggled for daily water. The work wasn't finished, might never be truly finished. But tonight, Elena wore a ring that promised partnership. Tonight, former enemies were planning shared windmills. Tonight, justice wasn't just an idea, but a lived reality, imperfect and fragile and worth every fight to preserve. She sealed the letter and prepared for bed, hanging tomorrow's clothes carefully. Her commission meeting dress beside her teaching apron, beside her wedding sketches. All the pieces of who she was becoming, stitched together with hope and determination. The revolution had begun with thread and needle. It would continue the same way, one connection at a time, one mended relationship at a time, until the whole fabric of society was rewoven. And at the center of that tapestry, two people who'd learned that love wasn't possession or control, but partnership in its truest form. Elena smiled, touching her ring. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, she was exactly where she belonged, building a future worth having, with a man worth having it with, in a community worth fighting for. The threads were coming together at last. Spring arrived in Wyoming like a blessing long withheld. The cottonwoods at the Lazy H burst into green, their shade dappling the crowd gathered for the wedding. Elena stood before the mirror in the ranch house. Mary Two Rivers adjusting the last pins in her hair. Nervous? Mary asked. No. Elena smoothed her dress, not white, but cream-colored wool she'd woven herself, embroidered with wildflowers at the hem. I've been nervous before. This feels like coming home. Through the window, she could see the preparations. Tables made from sawhorses and planks, covered with Maria's checkered cloths. Sam Kahn directing the placement of benches. Ruth Hawkins, fully recovered, arranging bouquets of prairie roses. And there, by the new windmill that turned lazily in the breeze, Cole, talking with Marshall Anderson and Patrick O'Brien. 3 windmills running already, Mary noted, following her gaze. 5 more funded. The cooperative's working. Because people are working together. Elena touched the small leather pouch at her throat, a gift from Mary's grandmother, containing sage and sweetgrass for blessing. A year ago, that seemed impossible. A knock at the door. Ruth entered, eyes bright. It's time. The path to the cottonwoods was lined with familiar faces. Railroad workers stood beside ranchers. Shoshone children threw flower petals alongside townspeople's daughters. Even Peterson had come, his wife wearing her best hat and a satisfied smile. Judge Harmon waited at the natural altar formed by 2 ancient trees. His cavalry coat, the one Elena had been mending that fateful night, pressed and proud. Cole stood beside him, and Elena's breath caught at the look in his eyes. Not possession, not conquest, but partnership and promise. The ceremony was simple. They'd written their own vows, speaking words that meant something after all they'd weathered. Elena, Cole said, his voice carrying over the gathered crowd. You taught me that strength isn't about standing alone. It's about knowing when to stand together. You showed me that mending what's broken takes more courage than walking away. I promised to stand beside you, not in front or behind, as we'd build a life worth living. Elena's voice was steady, though tears threatened. Cole, you followed me into danger without being asked, offered help without demanding control. You saw me not as something to fix or save, but as someone to partner with. I promised to trust you with my struggles as well as my strengths, to build with you a home where both can flourish. Judge Harmon smiled. By the authority vested in me by Wyoming territory, and by the grace of this community that stands witness, I pronounce you husband and wife. Their kiss was brief but real. full of promise. The crowd erupted in celebration, whoops from cowboys, ululations from the Shoshone women, Sam Khan's enthusiastic applause. The reception flowed like water finding its course. Tables groaned under Maria's cooking and contributions from every corner of the community. Sam's wife played fiddle while railroad workers danced with ranchers' daughters. Mary's nephew demonstrated traditional dances, then taught them to eager townspeople. Elena found herself pulled aside by Patrick O'Brien.
Mrs. Hart,
he said with a grin at her new name. Wanted you to know the union's voting to make water access part of our basic demands. What you started here, it's spreading. What we started, Elena corrected. All of us. As afternoon mellowed into evening, Elena noticed Cole talking intently with Judge Harmon and Marshal Anderson. She joined them, catching the end of their conversation. New territorial law about water rights. They'll need local enforcement. Anderson was saying. Are you offering me a job on my wedding day? Cole asked, amused. Offering you both jobs. Anderson replied. Water commissioner and deputy marshal. Someone needs to ensure the cooperative stays honest, that the law serves everyone equally. Elena and Cole exchanged glances.
We'll consider it,
she said.
After the honeymoon.
Anderson laughed. Fair enough. Though knowing you two, you'll probably spend it digging wells. As sunset painted the mountains purple, Elena and Cole stole away from the celebration. They walked to the new workshop addition, still smelling of fresh pine and possibility.
20 sewing stations,
Elena said, running her hand along the wooden frames.
We can train that many women at a time, give them skills to support themselves.
Maria's granddaughter already asked to be first, Cole said. And Ruth wants to help teach. They stood in comfortable silence, watching through the window as their wedding guests continued celebrating. Lanterns were being lit, creating circles of warm light in the gathering dusk. No regrets? Cole asked softly. None. Elena turned in his arms.
This is what I never had with Seamus partnership.
Shared purpose, mutual respect. We're building something together. Speaking of building, Cole produced a rolled paper from his jacket. Wedding gift. Deed to the Sullivan place. Borders our north pasture. Good soil for your dye garden. Elena unrolled the deed, touched by his thoughtfulness. Indigo and madder root. Amaranth for the Reds. Cole. This is perfect. Figured you'd want to control the whole process, from plant to thread to finished cloth. He smiled. Independent as always. Interdependent, she corrected, pulling him down for a kiss. There's a difference. Later, they rejoined their guests for the evening meal. Speeches were made, some eloquent, some stumbling, all heartfelt. Sam Khan spoke of bridges built not of wood, but of trust. Mary Two Rivers blessed them in Shoshone and English. Ruth Hawkins raised a toast to threads that bind us together stronger than any law. As the evening wound down, families began departing with tired children and full hearts. Elena and Cole helped with cleanup, unwilling to let others labor on their behalf.
Leave it,
Maria finally scolded. A wedding night is for the married couple, not for washing dishes. They were gently but firmly ejected from their own reception. Walking back to the main house, Elena marveled at the peace of it. No gunfire, no pursuit, no ledgers hidden in boots, just crickets singing and her husband's hand warm in hers. In their room now, Cole had placed a single prairie rose in a mason jar. Simple, perfect, real.
I love you,
Elena said, the words still feeling new and precious.
I should have said it months ago.
You showed it months ago. Cole drew her close. In every fight for justice, every late-night planning meeting, every time you trusted me with your fears as well as your strengths. They came together as equals, as partners, as two people who'd learned that love wasn't about possession but about choosing each other daily. Outside, the windmill creaked gently, drawing water from deep places to nourish the surface world. Morning came soft and golden. Elena woke to find Cole already up, sketching at the small desk by the window. "Planning something?" she asked, stretching luxuriously. "Irrigation channels for your dye garden." He showed her the design. "If we angle them right, runoff from the windmill will water everything naturally." "Already working on our first day married. Is it work when it's for our future?" He set down the pencil. "Besides, someone told me once that idle hands make for idle minds." Elena laughed, remembering her own words from the shop. So much had changed. Yet some things remained constant: the need to build, to create, to mend what was broken in the world. After breakfast, they walked their expanded land. The spring air carried promised new grass, fresh water, the sound of construction from the workshop. In the distance, another windmill was being raised on the Johnson property, funded by the cooperative. "Look," Cole pointed to a rider approaching.
"Isn't that Peterson?"
It was. The rancher who'd walked out of the water meeting dismounted awkwardly, hat in hand. "Mrs. Hart, Mr. Hart," he cleared his throat. "My wife says I'm a fool. She's usually right." Elena waited, letting him find his words. "That windmill on the Johnson place, it'll help them. But it'll help me too. My eastern pasture's been dry 3 years running." Peterson's weathered face showed the cost of his pride. "I want in. The cooperative. I'll pay my share. Do my part." "The next meeting's Tuesday." Elena said simply, "Bring your water survey maps. We'll figure out how to help everyone." After Peterson left, Cole squeezed her shoulder. "Another stitch in the fabric." "The hardest ones to make." Elena agreed. "But often the strongest." They spent the day in gentle industry, Cole working on irrigation channels, Elena organizing the workshop, both pausing frequently to touch, to smile, to marvel at this new reality. As evening approached, they sat on the porch, watching the sun paint familiar mountains in shades of gold and rose. "No dramatic rescues today," Cole noted. "No corrupt officials to expose. Just life." "Just life," Elena echoed contentedly, building something stitch by stitch, day by day. She felt for the small sewing kit still in her pocket habit by now, but instead of pulled seams or torn fabric, she saw only whole cloth stretching before them. The work of mending would continue. There would always be tears in the world's fabric. But now she had a partner to share the labor, a community to support the effort, and a future bright with possibility. As stars emerged in the vast Wyoming sky, Elena and Cole sat close, planning workshops and windmills, justice and gardens. Their love had been forged in conflict but would be proven in peace in the daily choice to build rather than tear down, to trust rather than fear, to mend rather than discard. The windmill turned steadily, drawing life from hidden depths. In the workshop tomorrow, women would learn to spin thread and weave their own futures. In the fields, cooperative labor would make the desert bloom. And in this house, 2 people would continue writing their story not with dramatic flourishes, but with the patient, steady work of love. Elena leaned into Cole's warmth, feeling the circle of his arms and the wider circle of community beyond. They'd started with thread and needle, with small acts of courage that grew into revolution. Now came the harder, quieter work of making that revolution last. But tonight, in this moment, it was enough to sit together and watch the stars, 2 people who'd found in each other not completion, but complement, not ownership, but partnership, not an ending, but a beginning as infinite as the prairie sky. The needle was threaded, the fabric was ready. Together, they would create something beautiful and lasting, one careful stitch at a time. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope Elena and Cole's journey touched your heart as much as it touched mine. Where are you listening from? Please share in the comments below. I'd love to know if you're hearing this tale from a bustling city, or perhaps somewhere under the same vast skies as our Wyoming heroes. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Night for more stories of courage, love, and justice from the American frontier. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and give us a hype to help more listeners discover these tales of the untamed West.